Hello Internet, welcome to my channel. Yesterday I posted a video about the cartridges that Sony patented recently, and I thought that it might be for the new PSP. But now another rumors are swirling around that this might be an SSD for the new PlayStation 5. But how come Sony will sell the SSD standalone? So the PS5 will never have a hard disk at all or any storage medium? So if Sony really sold the SSD standalone, it really shows this SSD or Sony technology into this SSD is quite expensive, and it forced Sony to sell it separately. And there's a good thing about this is the fact that the PS5 price will magically drop because SSDs ain't cheap. And we know SSDs help to load games faster, just like what Sony did recently with the Spider-Man demo. But is every gamer willing to pay a high price for the faster loading speed? Probably no. So that's why maybe Sony separated the SSD from the PS5. And probably the PS5 will have a standard hard drive, the mechanical one, and it is very slow. And this will create another problem for Sony because now you have two kinds of systems. One is very fast and one is very slow. And probably the experience will never be the same. So this is the downside of this situation or downside of this decision to sell the SSD separately. This is just remind me in 2006 when Microsoft started selling the Xbox 360 as standalone with no hard drive at all, and it was called Xbox 360 Arcade. It doesn't have any storage, and if I'm willing to pay more, I can buy the SSD separately. The problem with this practice is that it separated the fan base, and developer wasn't able to make games to be installed in the hard drive because they knew that there were a lot of gamers who does not have a hard drive in the Xbox 360H. But later on, Microsoft standardized the hard drive into every Xbox 360. So now why Sony is making the same mistake here? It's just like trying to separate the experience of the PS5. One is very fast and the other is very slow. Well, if you come to think of it, maybe Sony will have an idea or how to fix it. You see, SSDs comes in very big sizes, from 250 gigabytes to 1 tera or 2 tera. But what if Sony installed an 8 gigabyte or even 16 gigabyte or maybe 32 gigabyte of SSD inside the PS5? I know it is very small, but it can be used as a buffer here. When you run a game on PS5, the game will be loaded from the CD or the hard drive to this small SSD, the 32 gigabyte. Obviously, the first loading will be very slow, but once it starts loading, everything will be fast, as if you are using the real SSD cartridges that Sony is selling standalone. And see, this SSD is very small, the built-in SSD that I'm talking about. Obviously, one game will fill it completely. So if you run another game, this built-in SSD will be erased and the new game will be loaded inside this SSD, this buffering SSD. If you want an example here, if you go for the PC section of gaming, Intel have the same concept as well. If you ain't willing to pay extra money for the fast SSD or even large SSDs, Intel can speed up the regular hard drive, the mechanical one, if you are using their memory chip, which is called Optane. It is a very small chip and it has a very low space. But what is the job of this memory or this Optane memory is that it is very fast with low latency. It captures the data from the hard drive and store it. So whenever you are trying to recall this data, it will come immediately running for you. So just like converting their mechanical hard drive to a fast SSD. So this is what I think Sony is pushing forward, to sell a standalone SSDs that are very big in space, but they are very expensive. And in order for Sony to not compromise the fast loading experience, they will install a built-in SSD that is very fast and it will be used as a buffer. So tell me guys, what do you think about this idea? Is it true?